G'day, I'm Paul. So last night Kia unveiled the Kia Tasman and it was a bit of chaos around here with lots of people, but today we have an opportunity to get a little bit closer to the car. I'm going to run you through some of the highlights and put it into context within the rest of the ute range so you can get a better idea of what it looks like, how big it is, all that kind of stuff. So let's kick off down the front here. So the styling. I know I said when we did our last video that it is pretty controversial, and a lot of the comments were about the styling and what it looks like, whether people like it or don't like it. Styling is subjective, but ultimately this had to look different to everything else in the range, and it pretty much does. I mean, they have such a completely different design and a lot of unique features added in as part of that design as well that makes this different to other utes on the market. Now this here is the X Pro version. They're going to have a base model, an X line, and then the X Pro. This is the off-road friendly version. Mentioned in the previous video too that these headlights could be an issue if you're doing a lot of off-roading because they sit quite outboard, and it means that you are going to run the risk of having these damaged if you do have any branches or any sort of errant things on the outer edge of the body. Typically manufacturers will run these inboards or have at least the lighting element inboard so you don't have those issues if you do scratch anything off the side here. It is good though that these are sort of these big plastic sides, because if you do scratch them up they look to be replaceable, which is a good thing if you are going to do some proper off-roading. Let's talk about the dimensions. So this sits on the same wheelbase as a Ford Ranger, so it's 3270mm. So where they have changed it though in terms of the size is the overall length. So this is quite a big vehicle, so 5'4", 10mm long. So it is a pretty big boy. If you are going to be parking, it is going to stick out there, especially if you add a tow bar, because that will stick out at the back as well. But just something ute drivers are going to be used to. All-terrain tyres, these are going to be great for off-road driving. The X Pro version sits higher off the ground, so you have a ground clearance of 252mm. So it sits higher than the base and then the mid-spec version. So it's going to give you a bit more ground clearance for off-roading, and then with the all-terrains as well, you're going to be able to get further as well. Recovery points underneath, a bit more protection down the front there too. Wing mirrors over here, 360 camera. They have an off-road camera as well, so it means that basically you're able to see under the vehicle and everything that you're sort of traversing over, so better for off-road driving and gives you a better understanding of where your wheels are headed. And sorry about the background noise, we've got a whole bunch of stuff going on around here at the moment. Now let's talk about the side of the car. There's a stack of accessory side steps you're going to be able to option depending on which grade you go for, but it means there that you don't have to have the side steps if you don't want them. A lot of manufacturers will put those sort of kind of chintzy plastic side steps on that are kind of useless for anything other than stepping on, and even then they're kind of pointless anyway. So here at least you don't have to have them if you don't want to, and then if you do want side steps, you've got a number of accessory side steps to pick from, and then you've got a plastic garnish down the bottom there as well. The stack of colours to pick from, and also different interior trims. We don't know exactly what we'll be getting for Australia just yet, but we do know that this goes into production in 2025 around May, and then it will go on sale in Australia around that time as well. We don't know pricing either, but BYD shocked everyone by announcing pricing for Shark at under $60,000. So they're going to have to be pretty competitive with this if you have a full plug-in hybrid dual cab ute available for around that $60,000 mark. This is one of those innovations I was talking about. So storage in the side. While this wheel arch looks sort of very plastic and meaty, what they do actually have is storage in there, which means you can pop little odds and ends in there. We've seen this before on stuff like the Ram 1500 with the Ram box. So a really cool innovation, and it's good to see that they're actually utilising some of that dead space that you really don't have any use for otherwise. So I think that is really cool. Rear disc brakes, great news. Leaf sprung suspension, so they haven't gone down the path of coil springs. Frequency selective damping, which basically is the suspension they use on their road cars, and it gives you a finer sort of grain of tuning, and it means that the suspension can vary depending on the frequency of the road that it's travelling on. So really good feature there to have on you. It means that it's probably going to be comfortable. A lot of ride and handling tuning done here in Australia as well to make sure that this caters for the Australian market. Now around the back here, LED tail lights, which is cool, and I think they're full LED tail lights, not the sort of half LED setup you find on most of the utes on the market. A step here as well for retrieving things from the tray. You can see the X Pro badging here. This is what is going to signify this is the off-road spec. X Pro is a sort of brand moniker they have overseas for stuff like Telluride, where it comes with all terrains and a couple of other sort of bits and pieces there. Kia logo here on the tray with Tasman down the bottom, 3.5 tonne brake towing capacity with 350 kilos of downball. Payload. So payload varies between just over a tonne to just over 1.2 tonnes, and they confirmed last night as well they will offer a version of this with under a tonne of payload, which means you'll be eligible for a private novated lease, which is the mistake Mitsubishi made to start with. All of the Tritons were over a tonne, and they realised that people couldn't actually do a private novated lease on them. Camera built into this. Other great news with this tray is that it's spring-loaded, so when it drops down, you've got an assistance there for lifting and lowering it as well. It means you're not going to have to put in as much work to remove that. Roller cover, this is similar to what we've seen in other dual cab utes in this segment. It probably all comes from the same supplier, but electric roller cover. So we're talking about a tray bed that's just over 1,500 mil long. As reference, Ranger is under 1,500 mil, so this is longer than what you're going to find on a Ranger. 1,572 wide, again wider than some other utes in this segment, and just under 1,200 mil between the wheel arches. 540 mil deep, so slightly deeper than some other utes in the segment. And the advantage here as well is that you can actually fit a Euro and an Australian size pallet in the tray, so you can slide all of that in without any dramas. We actually saw some incredible accessory kits available overseas for this with dual stage, dual deck trays, which I thought was really cool. So you're going to really get a lot of advantage out of some of the accessories that are going to be offered. Over here, 240 volt outlet, 400 watt, which means you can power your tools out of the tray as well, which is pretty cool. This appears to just be a prototype tray. I don't think this will be the actual thing because it's quite slippery. Most of these are textured to stop stuff moving around. You have a light in the tray there as well. So the other thing I wanted to have a quick look at as well is the suspension. So if you want to join me underneath the vehicle. Now, if you have a look under here, you can see the live axle there with the diff. You've got the damper here inboard of the chassis rail. Leaf springs, these aren't the final version of the leaf springs. This is a two-leaf setup. I think they're going to have a different setup for the actual production vehicle. And then have a look at this. That is a meaty recovery point. So I suspect here for the X Pro, this is going to be rated recovery point. So if you are to do some proper off-roading, at least you're going to be able to yank the car out if you do finally get it stuck. Now, let's talk engines. I'm a little concerned about this plastic strip here. It's sort of attached to the bonnet there, but it appears to be something that'll probably come off a little bit easy if you do have something in the way here. In terms of the engines, 2 engines will launch globally with this, a 2.5 litre turbocharged petrol, and then this 2.2 litre turbocharged diesel, 150 kilowatts of power, 441 newton meters of torque. So it is a little lower than other vehicles in this segment. You've got 450 and 500 is the sort of the common amount you're going to find. But it is pretty efficient though at just under 8 litres per 100 Ks. That is not an official number yet, but one of the sort of engineering figures they've landed on. This is a carryover engine from stuff like the Sorento. They have increased cooling here for this vehicle, given it is off-road focused, but the figures are virtually what you're going to find on other vehicles in the Kia range. The 2.5 litre turbocharged petrol looks pretty good, 420 newton meters of torque, kind of similar to the 2.3 litre engine they have in the Ranger when it comes in petrol spec. It also doesn't appear there's any room here for a second battery, so if you are going to want to install one of those, I can't really see where you're going to be able to fit that without having to make some changes under the bonnet. So we're inside the cabin. This is some serious stuff for a dual cab ute. Had a bit of a poke around it last night, and while it does look sort of impressive in pictures, it actually looks much more impressive here in person. This has a seriously good luxury vibe to it. This is where a lot of the Chinese utes in this market have really excelled. They've thrown a lot at the interior, and I think Kia has learnt a lot from that, because if you want to be sitting inside your vehicle, you're going to be working from it a lot. You need to have all of those features and creature comfort. So a lot of soft touch surfaces and premium materials like this sort of leatherette sort of stitching. It really sort of does look high end. Where it gets even more high end though is with the tech. So 2 12.3 inch displays. You've got this central 5-inch display as well for temperature and climate controls. Only issue with it though, which I've noticed in the EV9, is when you're driving along, I can't actually see half of that. So I don't even know what is sort of going on there. You've got to kind of put your head around it to actually catch what is on the display. So to me, that could probably be done a little bit better. You can control temperature down here as well if you need to. So these are manual controls that then kind of just communicate what's going on up there. But like your air vents and a couple of other sort of functions, you're going to have to run through here. You don't really have any other options. Notice here ahead of the driver, you've got a driver distraction monitor, hopefully better tuned than some of the stuff we're seeing in dual cab utes on the market at the moment. But this has a full suite of safety features, front and rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking sensors, the 360 camera, every beep you can you can imagine already. But yeah, really is sort of fully featured there. It is also interesting, they've gone away from a shifter. We did notice in some of the spy photos a shifter. Perhaps that is for the 2.5 litre, but here for the diesel, they've got a shifter from their EVs. So it frees up all of your central space here, which I think is probably a good thing. You eventually get used to this. Now, there is an off-road menu here as well that I'll try and show you. Here we go. So basically press off-road and it gives you this little animation which you can skip and disable, but it gives you all of the off-road functions, which I think is really cool. So it's good to see that they've actually put a bit of effort into that. Down here, you're going to notice the trailer brake controller as well. So this is integrated and fitted to the vehicle, which means you don't have to worry about any aftermarket stuff. Over here, dual Qi wireless phone chargers, so fast wireless phone charging on a grippy pad with plenty of clearance for cooling. 2 USB-C ports as well. You might be wondering, why is this so flat? Well, they've got this great feature here, which is a table that folds out. It gives you a chance to do your work, for the tradies to hit you up with some variations. They could do that on that tray there. And then inside the center section, you have stacks of storage. And then here on the actual, the sort of center console lid, you've got dimensions of the vehicle. They're quite obsessed with dimensions because they're here and also here. But anyway, you're going to know exactly how big the vehicle is. We did notice in some of the international footage, there was actually a fingerprint scanner in the center here. That appears to have been replaced by this. In terms of your drive modes, paired to that diesel engine, you've got 2 high, 4 automatic, 4 high, and 4 low. So fully featured there. It means that you can sort of move between those while you're on the fly, with the exception of 4L, which needs to be in neutral. You have a mechanical, manually locking rear diff. I was a little bit concerned that this would be an automatic locking rear diff. It isn't that, which is good, but it does have traction control functions that allow it to sort of simulate a diff lock when required. And you've got a stack of actual drive modes as well, including this one they call X-Trek, which allows you to do a cruise control function while off-road for going up hills and down hills. Then on the steering wheel, you switch between drive modes and terrain modes as well. Nice steering wheel too, with paddle shifters as well, which is certainly a handy feature to have if you're towing. You want to be able to rip through the gears if you need to. On the other storage front, you've got storage up the top, down the bottom there. Heated and cooled seats, you've got a heated steering wheel, and the seats look fantastic. They're like a space age setup here, look really nice and comfy there too. So certainly from the front of the cabin here, it is a pretty cool place to be seated. I'll show you the back as well. We've got a couple of interesting features there too. Now, second row, some more sort of interesting features here. So you can drop the back. Not much point doing it because there isn't much well, there's nothing in here. This has the optional Harman Kardon sound system, and I think that is a subwoofer for it there in the center, but you do have a top tether point there. What is really interesting though is the storage they've managed to wrangle under the seat. So a lot of the time you're limited in terms of space under the seats here, especially on some of the older platforms that the other manufacturers are using. But given this is a brand new platform, they've kind of thought about this from the ground up and just stack of storage space here. So you've got around 33 litres to work with under both seats. They've even got like a little hidden platypus in there as well to signify, you know, the Aussie roots of the Tasman, which I think is pretty cool. Now, watch this. Let's see what it's like in terms of legroom. So Kia claims that this has excellent headroom, knee room, legroom, shoulder room. So shoulder room I'm really impressed with. In fact, it feels much wider than any other ute in this segment. That is really cool. There is even a padded section on the door as well if you do want to have a little rest on that. In terms of knee room, look, it feels fine. It doesn't feel sort of any better or worse than any other utes in the segment. This is my seat sort of pretty far back in my standard driving position. You do have these mat pockets that zip open and close, so you can sort of store things in there. It's like a wetsuit style material. And you've got storage up the top as well. Air vents here for cooling, 240 volt outlet down the bottom there. You've got a set of USB-C charging ports off to the side as well. Heaps of headroom though, which is pretty impressive. The other cool feature is Ram 1500, I think Chevy Silverado as well. You can recline the seats, and have a look at this. You can get up to 30 degrees of recline. So great idea in theory, but if you do have this seat quite far back, you'll see when it's reclined, I'm kind of just wedged in here. So not exactly as spacious as you'd expect, but you know, it is what you get in this segment without having to step up to something giant like a Ram 1500 or an F-150. Center armrest as well with a couple of cup holders, a device holder. So it's a pretty sort of decent setup here in the second row. Look, this has been your first sort of look at the Kia Tasman. I'm certain we're going to be able to drive this soon, but it doesn't go on sale until next year. So they'll be promoting this at the Australian Open. We'll see a few of these driving around. There's probably still a bit of development work to be done, but heaps has been done already in Australia, and the Australian content in this vehicle makes it kind of feel very uniquely Australian, a bit like the Hilux and the Ranger in that sense, given how much work they put into it. So I'm excited to drive it. I'm excited to see what it's like off-road, and I hope they've learnt from the mistakes of brands like Mitsubishi with the Triton, where kind of just drop the ball in some of those key areas. So we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you reckon in the comments section below. I know a lot of people had comments around the styling. Put styling to the side just for 1 second, because the rest of this package actually does look pretty impressive. The engine will be an interesting one, 8-speed automatic. I don't know how they're going to manage that torque band, but you know, it might just work. We'll see what it's like when we finally do get a drive. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel so you can find out when we do get behind the wheel of this. But until next time, take it easy.